UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Today we focus on accelerating action for gender equality, especially in the area of trade. If you've been to any town, any city, even the one of Kampala, any town in this country, you've seen women either vending, selling, or hawking things around the city. 3 out of every 5 people you see hawking, there's a lady. It will come to peanut butter, to anything that is perishable or anything that can be used at home. The biggest question is, how much have we done to enable them to thrive in a business or trade or marketing of their businesses there? Micro or small or medium businesses, how far have we gone? We've come as far as affirmative action to today where we have a grow project and we're wondering, are we doing enough? Or are we sabotaging ourselves, especially with how much money we're sinking into this? We look at young women, especially looking at the statistics that have come out recently from the census that show that the biggest number of ladies are in business and about 40% are into getting credit facilities to boost their businesses. But where are we failing as a country? Even as we celebrate the Women's Month, this 3rd month of the year, how much are we doing? That's the biggest question. But let me get to the panel that is here with me. On my immediate left, it is a fully ladies panel today. I am the only gentleman here today, disclaimer. On my immediate left, Professor Sarah Sari, the Director of Gender and Social Development at Makerere University, that institute there. Good evening, Professor, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, our viewers, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Ambassador Damali Sali, who is the Chief of Projects at the Private Sectors Foundation Uganda, but also the founder of Ideation Creation there. She's with us this evening. Good evening, and it's good to have you for the first time.
Thank you so much, Timothy. Good evening to you.
Next, she hasn't been here in a while, but normally when we're talking about money and lady matters, we normally refer to her. Dr. Ape Agnes Atim, representing the women of Amolata, but also passionate about seeing the growth of trade and business and the economics in this country. Good evening, Doctor, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, and good evening, viewers. Thank you for having me again.
She has traversed the continent, the country, and now Kawempe. Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, the chairperson of the Women's League at the National Resistance Movement. Good evening, Honorable, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. I'm happy to be here, and greetings from Kawempe North. There is a lady taking the seat tomorrow in Kawempe North.
With that, we'll be forced to comment towards the end on what we think tomorrow will be like. Lastly but not least, hosting her for the very first time, Honorable Minister in charge of people with disabilities, but also Member of Parliament representing people with disabilities in the Eastern region, Honorable Asamo Grace Helen is with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable Minister, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy. Good evening, viewers, and also good evening, listeners, for the sake of those with visual impairment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me throw some numbers at you there, especially when you look at some, most of us come here and talk about leadership and all the things that happen in there. Members of Parliament, the women representation, that means the members of Parliament, directly elected ex-officials, the number comes to 186 out of 559. That represents about 33% there. But also when we look at cabinet, out of the 31 members, ministers of cabinet, 14 of them are ladies. That makes it about 45%. State ministers, those fall to 50%, 24 out of 50. That makes it about 48%. But when we come closer home, we look at the graduation that recently happened at the University, Makerere to be exact. 6,300 were girls, 5,000 were boys. When we look at USC, results that came out in 2023, 53% were girls. When we look at UPE that recently came out, 47% are girls. When we look at UCE, 49% were girls. Are we doing enough? Especially looking at the census that showed about 49% of the population are ladies. And if we look at how much is being borrowed, especially with every program that has been put there, Are we doing enough? You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there. Our X handle, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let us know what you think. Or the number 0709 60 25 92 for text and WhatsApp. Let's get started. Honorable Minister, it's befitting I start with you, especially with the celebrations that happened over the weekend. A lot spoken about, ladies in arms there. But every time I drive around this country, anywhere you go, come all the way from Gulu to Busia, northeast, you will find ladies either in the market selling perishables, you'll find ladies either hawking things. This evening, if you drove any part of this city, you found ladies selling either bananas, grapes, sponges, sour soap, all these things. Give us a basis of what the state of the ladies in this country looks like, in your view.
Okay, thank you. I want to start by saying a woman by nature, we are business women. And if you're a woman in a family, you must be thinking ahead of your family, how to keep it. So that puts you into a focus of being business oriented. And the reason you see there's so many women struggling to make ends meet. So your question of saying, how do we look at it? We see it as a population that can be grown and be supported to do business. Like the women who are hawking bananas, maybe apples on the streets. The president of Uganda said they should not be taxed because they do a hand-to-mouth kind of business. So that category of women you have talked about can be able to sell their products and be able to earn some money for their family, rather than sitting at home and doing nothing. So for me, I think the angle of business, women are business oriented. But you also need to recognize that government has put in a lot of effort to see that these women are supported. Some of them have formed their circles and they're able to get money. That's why they can borrow and then go back and do some business for their families. And really talking about the small micro women, that is the message I wanted to tell the listeners, that by nature, women are business oriented. They just need to be given skills, they need to be given support, and then you will see that the sky is the limit.
Honorable Minister, do you feel like government is relinquishing its role to support women? Because the number of NGOs that are already doing this to support, either giving a hand up, giving a handout, giving skilling, and also individuals that are getting out there. How much more should government be doing?
I don't think government is really running away from supporting women. First of all, the environment that has given women to do business is really the political will of government. So you find that space which has been given is given by government. Even an NGO to run its business, it all comes out because of the political will of government. So they come in to complement what government is doing. So we realize that we have done some kind of skilling programs. You have all these vocational institutes which have been training the children. The recent one, the hubs that the president has been going around the country and opening, trying to train the youth to learn skills. And you find that some of them are doing certain skills like hairdressing, bakery, making shoes, and all these other things. And then they get back to their community and be able to to earn a living. Government has come with programs. You remember there was the Farmers Web, the Women Interpretive Program, where women would be put in groups, and then they were able to to earn some money in that group kind of formation. So the women would be benefiting from a grant. It was kind of a loan, but then they get this money, then they will get the money, borrow, and pay back to government. Now, as we looked at the web, it had advanced most of the women to a certain level. And the reason now we have the GROW, which everybody is talking about. But GROW is looking at women who are at a certain level of business. And that's why we are saying from the 4 million up to the 500 million. Because that group of women should be women who are either in small and micro businesses. Then they can be improved in terms of skilling, and we partner with institutions like MOOPs, private sector, to train these women and skill them to be better. Because the purpose of GROW is to get a woman who can also employ other young people in their business, and maybe they can qualify to become exporters at the end of the day, and then bring back taxes into the economy. So that's why GROW is there. But you know, when people talk about GROW, they are looking at the small women. That money is for women who are already graduated from web, graduated from PDM. Now they are moving to a longer level. And ours is employment chances, and also trying to see that we get the women to contribute to the economy of this country.
Thank you very much. Honorable Lydia, when you look at the numerous government programs, one that the ministers mentioned, all the way to where we are, why are we not achieving the desired results?
It's a process. I won't say that we may not have achieved the desired results, but we are not where we were 5 years or 10 years ago, even 15 years ago. We've gone somewhere, progress has been made, but we want to do more. We are to get where we want to go. So it's not in vain. There's a lot of progress going there. There's been a very big campaign to connect women into the business world, but to improve them in terms of skills, do the issues of quality and standards. And I think the Honorable Minister, the ministry has really been at it for a long time. Finding markets, connecting women to markets, but also helping them to raise the standards for the market. You've heard that, you know, we are very good at handwork, maths, crafts. By the end of the day, there's the issue of standards. You talked about the shea butter and the nuts and the simsim. In Uganda, you can pick it on the roadside, but we want them to package it for the international market and do exports. And when to get there, there's this issue of standards, which are just out of reach. The cost of reaching standards and then the quantities, be able to supply in time, but also consistently. We have not reached there. So because we have a grown sector with mandate like the ministry, but with a lot of partners, you have the private sector, you have the civil society, we have the business community. There's a lot of work going on in terms of, first of all, being able to meet the contracts, the expectations, but also to meet the standards. The biggest challenge for women is standards for the market. Because we are all doing the same things. I mean, we all do knitting, we all do maths, but to do very nice crafts as our part of our home tradition and culture, in terms of making it marketable to the international, across the borders, even with the current infrastructure, is still a challenge. Even if you meet the standards, then the consistency of the supply of the markets. People tell us, you are going to supply goat meat, you are going to supply beef, or you are going to supply vegetables. Then you begin hearing the stories of saying that they are not meeting the standards. Or if you meet the standards, you're not able to consistently supply. They say bring 100 tons every quarter, and you're not able to meet the tons. So managing women and business community in terms of circles, in terms of meeting standards, and even if it is fresh vegetables or flowers, we have not yet reached the level of consistency growth, the chain. You've heard about value addition. There's the campaign about value addition, supplying in time. We have not been able to maintain our crops even in the dry season. You see, we've just had a 2 months dry spell. All our coffee in many areas has dried up. Yeah. And then there was a campaign of coffee, everybody was running up and down planting. Now it has dried because we've not fixed irrigation, we've not fixed extension services, and the bulk of the women, and the Honorable Minister can confirm this, is there in the agriculture sector. So our best bait, our best strength is in the agriculture sector. What are we producing for our own consumption? What are we producing for the national market? What are we producing for the market outside Uganda in a sustainable manner? So capacity is important, competency is important, extension services are important, but also consistency. And let's pick a crop we can all do, market growth, cooperatives, and be able to be consistent in terms of the market access, but also most important, I mean, every other day they are bringing new regulations like the EU. They bring new, and they're very expensive to meet. When you're exporting this or you're exporting that, the standards, the market, you realize that the fluctuation, especially for us who are in the agriculture sector, like Uganda is 70% of the women in Uganda rely heavily on agriculture. Just look, still subsistence in many ways. We have not even done a lot of technology or mechanization of we speak about our policies, even the National Development Plan 4 going forward is speaking about mechanized agriculture, but we are still using the hand hoe for subsistence and it will not take us anywhere. So yes, we have not reached there, but this thing is already advanced on policy, in ideas. We know where our women are, we know their passion, we have their energy, but we need to go beyond that in terms of mechanization of agriculture, pick a product that we can run away with, and ensure that it can be able to be consistently supplied with value addition so that we are able to make profits and provide employment.
Honorable, speaking with you before I come to Honorable Ape, why are policies failing to trickle down, especially in implementation? Why are they not being translated to the last person, or are we creating programs and expecting them to fit in a round hole with a square program?
We've come a long way. Just recently, we now have areas like most of Acholi. We've zoned the country. Government has zoned the country. And to speak about areas like Acholi, Sub-region, and Lango, we have now extensive mechanized agriculture, which was not there before. We also have areas that have completely transformed, which are known traditionally to be cattle keeping areas. Now they keep cattle for economy, for money, not just for culture. So they have transformed the whole cattle sector in terms of keeping cattle, breeding cattle for production, for export, but also for market, for the economy. So it's work in progress. There are areas that have been zoned for agriculture. Look at Masaka. We recently did a census of how the coffee sector is going. Remember the debate? And we realized that Masaka is doing very well now in terms of coffee. And where I come from Bugisu. We grow the most unique coffee in the world, Arabica coffee. So that has also been zoned. And the next campaign is to make sure that we do value addition. So yes, don't sound impatient, Timothy. These things take time. Policies take time to grow. We are running a cash economy. We are talking about tenfold planning now to make sure that we grow the economy. But finally, we'll get there, because if we do not fix the campaign, the government policy on value addition, we are exporting our wealth, the raw materials. So there's this policy in government, whether it's minerals or crops, we are saying stop exporting raw materials. Let's get back and do industrialization, planning, and policy so that everything is done in Uganda and we can only export with value addition. So we are going to get there, and I think it's progress. Maybe there should be periodic briefing to the Timothys of Uganda so that they reduce the doubting Thomas. The country has been growing in the process. We've fixed stability. Our biggest challenge as a country was instability. We could never do anything, even sitting at UBC to have a conversation. It was not there. We're always on this duka. But now we have a stable country. We fixed security. We can now talk about the economy. We have fixed the capital development. We have UPE. We can now talk about literacy levels. Someone who can read and write across the country. We are talking about a liberalized economy, even the media, so that we have an environment. We had to take time to create an environment that makes this conversation possible. In terms of growth, we are talking about capital development, the private sector growth. We're talking about now triggers of growth. For example, value addition. Before that, we could not have this conversation. I hope you are now picking what we are trying to say.
I hope 40 years later we still can be patient. But let me come to the Honorable.
It's a process.
Honorable Ape, I know you have been on ground, and let's get to the real person. I spend a lot of time in the Acholi, in the Lango region there, and the women are on bicycles, in the markets. Even when Honorable Lydia was talking about agriculture, the biggest labor force in there is women.
Yes.
You have had the practical ability to have some of them do that. What challenges have you faced, especially in this trade of business for women, even as we push for this equality of gender? What challenges have you faced? How have you mitigated them?
Thank you very much. And as you rightly stated, there's evidence and there's data that shows, I'm not read, I think Professor will update me on the data of how many, the percentage of women in agriculture. By the last time, I think it was about 78 or
Yes.
80%
78%.
78% of women are actually in agriculture. But you would be surprised that when we talk about agriculture, there's a whole value chain for agriculture. Now, the majority of the 80% or 78% we're talking about are actually in production. And before we started here, you would find women in opening the land, in planting, and then the weeding, and then the harvesting. When it comes to the next stage of now processing that product, then you're going to see less and less women. There you'll find now the men carrying the maize, carrying the rice. Those
And
that
the coffee.
need to be processed. Less women are there. And in the process there, you realize that there are two challenges there. One is the land ownership issue, because it is a fact that when you're married, however much crop or millet or what you produce, you're actually producing it in a man's land where you're really married. And so that is one challenge, that land ownership still lingers around in how women can progress a little bit faster and better in the business sector. Then it comes to the issue of marketing. So when this product is brought to the mill or for processing, as I said, you get the men there. And when they come, they're carrying it on the bicycle. The bicycle is theirs. The phone where the money most likely is going to be paid is actually for that man. So the whole technology question, the whole transportation question is a challenge. Still, that is just in the agriculture sector. And also in the marketing, I appreciate that my big sister is looking at a more advanced market. I am looking at a local market in my village, in Amolata. You're going to find that when it comes to selling simsim now, or maize in the market, most probably that is going to be the man who will carry that product and bring to the market. And there you're talking about the power relations that is involved now in the money economy. So for me, those are the practical challenges that women actually face at the community level. And so for me, the best thing that got to be done, or that government is really at the moment working on, and my honorable ministers highlighted some of the things that, one, government is addressing the access to financing. And that is why you see the BDM, and I really have to applaud government, that money is going to the parish and reaching to the village. And there is that element of 30%. I think the recent report I read is that women are being the PDM beneficiaries. I think women are about 40%. I need to cross-check, maybe she has also increased. So somehow, some work is happening in terms of access to financing. I think government had also deliberately come out with the web, which was particularly focusing on the women. So if women's businesses in my village to produce more maize or cut more fish in the lake, then we need to look at the issue of access to financing and access to resources for them to be able to increase their production, but also improve on the quality of their product that my colleague has also talked about. So that market access is also really an issue. But also there is that element of violence that comes in as well. Much as we are advocating for women to have access to these resources, increase on their production and productivity. But when money comes in that process of the business, then you're going to see that element of violence that is going to come in terms of a man or a husband asking, tell me how much money you actually got, or how much money you've got, how much is the share, and then it comes to that element of how do they share actually that resources at the household level. So women has got so much potential in doing business. And as I've highlighted, they are hardworking, but when it comes to that, those are the challenges, but also conventional businesses. For example, if UBC was a business, I would ask you how many women are actually in leadership in this particular business venture. So as you go up the ladder of that value chain of any business, you're going to get fewer and fewer women along the chain. So I think when we are looking at the women participation in the business sector or ecosystem, we need to look at it in both the issue of, most times we look at, like you were reading, the leadership, the political and all that, but we need to look at it in the context of markets, of access to resources, but also of ownership of the business itself. So some of those are really some of the challenges, and how best that we need to also make some of these business environments a bit gender responsive, but also a business environments that make these women to be able to thrive. Like for example, in the village, in my rice mill, for example, where I mill the rice, is there a provision for a woman to come with her child as she waits to mill the rice? There is somewhere where she can take care of the child. So some of those simple but very important for women to be able to thrive in whatever business that they're in.
You mentioned a few things that really caught me, especially when you talked about land, financing, and we'll come to those in a bit. But something on culture and norms. How do we navigate that? Because you talked about the men getting the maize, the rice, and the ones, then the money is going to them. Then some areas, like in the north, the man waits and says, pass the money, and we'll go to the bar. How do we navigate that area of cultural norms and beliefs, especially as Africa or as Uganda?
I think norms and social contracts is a very dynamic topic, yeah? And in most cases, when you reach there, then somebody say, but that's our culture and all that. But I think cultures and norms can be changed. It is written there that, oh, money should be held by this, a bicycle should be for this and that. I think the most important thing is engagement with the various stakeholders in our communities. I'll give you an example of my rice project. When I started in Molata, my interest was to bring women and men together to agree on certain things, on how we can actually move in doing this business. And one of the things was that we made sure that the whole cooperative is female-based, from leadership to decision-making to making everything that works in that particular cooperative. But we ensured that men were involved. Now, whenever meetings are taking place, the women chair the meeting, but they come with their husbands. To the extent that if they need to consult, they actually consult, as opposed to that construct that it is a man who are supposed to sit on the chair and make the decisions, and for us women, we sit from behind or sit down, something like that. So those are some of the small but very impactful ways of how to engage in some of these norms. The other thing is that I've also seen churches or religion coming in as well to make sure, to ensure that issues that affects women are actually raised in churches. I know that somebody can also come up and say there are those biblical references that are made that women should obey the husband, right? And the husband should love the women. I'm not saying that that is not what's supposed to be done. that humility, that love, and all that should really be in a respectful manner and in a way that we respect each other's role in a society, but also in a business in this context. So I think the main issue on how to navigate is engagement, is male involvement. It is about upbringing of our children in our homes. What do we tell the girls and what do we tell the boys? I know that in many homes now, boys are helping their sisters to wash plates. But when we were growing up, in our time, washing plates was not for boys. It was strictly for the girls. And then collecting firewood, and the boys would go and look after the cows, and you know. So I think we've got to engage our children at a very young age. We've got to engage our men. We've got to also work with the women themselves to ensure that they understand that these norms are just social constructs that can actually be reconstructed to the benefit of both male and female in our society.
Thank you very much. Tamali, you have been in ideation. You are both, you were part of the EU, you're now part of PSFU on these projects. But when you see the women, especially the ones that are moving around with peanut butter, moving around with fruits, hawking bananas in the markets there, or the ones that have shops and doing all these things, why are businesses failing to transition from 1 to 3 birthdays and dying at that? What is happening there? What missing link do we have?
Thank you for the question. And maybe I'm going to take a different approach. I like to look at things on where we are currently. I can see that if you look at the last 10 years, we've definitely moved as a women movement in Uganda in business. But then also, you also have to categorize the women. You know, the women in business, we have domestic informal traders, we have cross-border informal traders where the women are as well. We do have middle managers, women who are in leadership or in business. We have top corporates, women leading actual corporations. And so you need to categorize them in a way before you have a generalization about the women. There are different categories of them, and what they need is different. And the level of growth, if you look at the last 10 years to where we are now, is also different. For example, globally, Uganda is ranked as usually number 1 or number 2 in the number of women who own businesses. Globally, we are at 40%. That's a very high number when they look at all the other countries globally. I think the highest, usually we are between Botswana and Uganda, fighting for that global place. So women entrepreneurs in Uganda are actually very entrepreneurial, and we're ranked very highly at that level. So of course that doesn't negate the issues that are affecting the informal women traders, both domestic and cross-border traders. And at PSFU, what we do, we are the apex body of the private sector. We have members who are associations, and these members are categorized in sectors, because each sector has its own interest. And for the purposes of painting a picture, I'm going to look now not at the informal cross-border traders, because we've talked about them a lot, or the honorables have talked about those. We are not going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about too much about the domestic informal traders, but let's look at the corporate women in business. If you look at manufacturing, yes, there are issues, but we have some women who are leading there. If you look at Barbara Mulwana, that's a very good example, a good mentor for women to just look up to. Where could I be as a female who wants to be in manufacturing? I could look at Barbara Mulwana. We have Dr. Maggie Kigozi, who is another wonderful example of a woman entrepreneur who has done manufacturing. She's actually been in very many different spaces as a female entrepreneur. We've talked about agriculture being the bedrock of Uganda. We have 78% of women are involved in the agriculture sector. But also there is a big budding size of SMEs that are being run by women entrepreneurs who are adding value to all these products, the shea butter, the cocoa. We are really extracting quite a lot, but they're mostly SMEs. However, women are really beginning to take that space of value addition in that, in agriculture and agribusiness. Some of the women examples I'll give you are Dr. Juliana Dieri, who runs Delight. I can give you Bella Wine, that's a wonderful one, who is adding value to agricultural produce. Then our other sector that we look at tourism. about 80% of the people in tourism, the bottom of that value chain, are actually women and youth. But also we have women at the top in tourism. If you look at the head, the person heading Auto CV Tumusimwe, a female, the lady heading UTA, that is Palka Koza, a woman. She's also the chairperson of UTB. We have OHOA run by Susan Muhwezi. We have UCTA run by Helen Luvoa. We do have the PS of tourism is a female. The former UTB ED or CEO, Lilia Jarova, is a woman. So now that value chain, if you look at tourism, the women at the bottom and the youth in that value chain, but also we have women at the top. So at least we have a bit of a balance, and in a way we are moving in that right direction. The other area I could look at is on trade, but maybe I could focus on informal cross-border trade, which most people don't pay attention to. But our informal cross-border trade as Uganda gives us a trade surplus. In terms of informal trade, we are actually trading more with our neighbors. We're selling more to them, so we get a trade surplus as a country. But 80% of the people in informal cross-border trade at all the borders in Uganda are either youth or women, and they're mostly selling our agricultural products. That's what we do. So in terms of informal trade, we are dominating as women actually there. Not that there are no challenges, but at least we are dominating and creating a trade surplus for the country. If I look at financial services, again, the few women I'm going to point out to you are, let's think about Anjuko, who headed Stambik Uganda. Now she's Stambik Regional, taking basically the entire EC. We have the CEO of EcoBank, the CEO of Equity, Finance Trust Bank. Those are all women. If you look at, okay, this is a government agency, but Capital Markets Authority is being headed by a woman right now. So if we have any young girls who are looking for, who do I look up to as a woman and I want to go into financial services, they have examples that they can follow through. And now we have women who are really heading those institutions, which may not have been the case 10 years ago. So we need to credit ourselves that we are kind of moving in that direction. The construction sector, if you look at Judy Rugasira, who heads NITRANC, you look at one of our board members, she's called Shali Kongai, who is heading the area, which is the Association for Real Estate in Uganda. It's headed by a female. That's a construction sector. Male-dominated, we consider it very male-dominated, but these women are thriving there, and they can be looked at also as potential examples, because usually what helps women to thrive is when you see it, when you see another woman who's done it, it's easier for you to dream than when you're going to be the first. So I like to look at it in that way. If you look at the ICT telecom sector, for example, we have Sylvia Mlinde, who is heading MTN. We have in transport and logistics, we have a wonderful example of someone a woman who's thrived in transport and logistics, that is Dr. Marian Sebunya. So I would say we are not where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We are heading in the right direction. There's still more that needs to be done, which is somewhat being done. If I can go to say what the government is currently doing with the government of Uganda, Ministry of Gender, PSFU is implementing that project called GROW, part of it, not all of it, part of it. And the government has availed this money that it got from the World Bank to finance women in business and give them access to money at 10%. The commercial rates are actually 22%. So government is availing this money to women in business at 10%. That is more than half what the commercial rates would be. And it's to be able to see that these women that we were talking about, who are doing informal trade, who are actually in business, who are trying to go from level A to level B, can, if they can, access finance that can help them to jump to the next level. This program is a 5-year program, and once the women pay back the money, this will be turned into a fund by the government of Uganda. So that's a wonderful contribution from the government side in helping women access finance, because that's one of the biggest problems for women entrepreneurs, access to finance. Not just access, actually, the cost of finance was also even when you can access, it's just too expensive at 22%. So with this government intervention of GROW, where now the rates are 10%, and if you pay well, if you get a GROW loan, you're given 2 years. But if in the first year you pay well, that 10% will be reduced to 5%. And that's to see that we can avail that access. Of course, not everyone is going to get it, because there's a limit to how much it is. But at least it will have demonstrated that women can pay back the cost of finance. If you reduce it, maybe they can access. It will help also to show that a woman has grown their business from level A to level B, which maybe they wouldn't have been able to do before. So I think we can look at, and we talk about a lot, all the challenges, all the problems, but also I want us to celebrate the journey 15 years ago to the journey now, that I can just literally give you those examples of these women who are in those spaces. That doesn't negate the fact that we still have the challenges. We talked about the challenges of quality standards. A lot of the women who are in SMEs who are adding value to our local products, who are adding value to honey, to shea butter, to coffee. The problem is standards. It's harder for them to conform with the standards that allow their product to sit on a shelf, sorry, on a supermarket in Kenya. Yeah. So the standards have to be sorted out. The branding, the quality of the branding. Most times I buy a lot of local products. I love buying local products that have been added value to. But you see, the branding hasn't said anything. You know, if they tweaked it a little bit, gave a little story about this coffee that was grown on the slopes of Mount Elgon, where someone else will pay a higher value for that just by that bit of branding, but they don't know. And even when they know, it's expensive. So branding, standards, that's important. The marketing part, that's important. The access to capital, that's important. And the mentorship, that's important also.
And that's exactly where I wanted you to go. Because when we talk about mentorship, and you have spoken highly of the ones who are the echelon of leadership, the ones who are in senior management there, and we're talking about the corporates in this world. What challenges are they facing, especially because when we look at these statistics, the biggest percentage of young people between 0 to 15 or 15 to about 35 are young women there. So how much are they doing to translate that to them? Or it is the stilettos and the handbags that are causing the issues here to be able to get them up there? How much are they doing to get them there? Because there's that is not breaking the glass ceiling.
Okay, so if you look at the say corporate sector or general business, I think it depends, because private sector is very diverse. It depends on who is heading that corporation. It depends on the policy of that particular corporation, on whether they support their policies, first of all, support women leadership or women growth. You can usually look, and you can usually tell from which corporation supports women and which one doesn't, without you even being in. You can look at their senior management. Do they have any top women at that senior management? Or is it headed by a guy, the senior management are men, and then at middle level and lower level, that's when you see all the women. And they will tell you 50% of our staff are actually female. But then when you look at the layers within that, it's not 50-50. And usually to see a good corporate is usually the top management, they are females. Yes, the top guy may be a guy, but your senior management, your exco, they usually call them exos, 50-50 can be women. Your middle layer, are they 50-50? Because we are 50%. You said we are 50% of the population. So ideally, and based on your statistics, we are graduating from university. Surely, we are pretty, as females, we are doing that. So in your corporation, you can't say that you have 8 directors in your company and all of them, 7 of them are men, and the only female over there is HR. And usually that happens in those corporates. So you can tell, so you can tell by the people they have from the top level to the lower level on whether it's going to be supporting females. But there are some corporations that actually are supporting females, and you can also tell from their senior leadership. Yes, the top guy may not be a female, but you can see in their senior leadership. But also you can tell from who do they give the microphone to. And when I say microphone too, who do they send to represent them? They may have females, but they never send those females to represent them out there. Then you know they're not actually supporting females.
Damali, before I come to Professor, my last question to you. This accelerated action for gender equality, trade and business sounds very good, yet sounds very elitist, that it stops in Kampala, Mukono, Wakiso. What happens to Amolata, Mbale, Busia, Gulu? For a young girl out there, how does this translate to them? Very good words, very impressive, very good PR pictures that we can take after this. But really, how does it translate to a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old there that has ambitions to get into business? This is elitist and doesn't sound really resonating with them. How does it resonate with them?
You're right. I don't like those big words. I don't know why we don't simplify. I don't know why accelerating. Even I have to pay a lot of attention to understand what it is.
Accelerated action for gender equality.
It's really like, why don't we do something to help women, like girls, the girl child? We should simplify words. But I do agree. But of course, people have to start somewhere. So if you're going to start that action to support gender equality, you have to start somewhere. But the plan should be you're going to go further, right? And this should be. The onus should be really on all of us, right? If you're from Gulu, you're a successful female entrepreneur there, please mentor some people there. Please be an example. Please go out there, go to the local radio and encourage people. Host them at your corporation. So I feel like and I'm mostly speaking from a private sector perspective, is that we all need to do something. If you're running a serious, successful business in Arua and you're a female, then employ more females, mentor more females, support more females. Make sure that the policies within your company are encouraging female leadership. They're encouraging female succession. So as private sector, I feel like we also, as individuals, if you're a female and you're at the top and you can do something about mentoring women, about accelerating their growth, about even showing them an example, then we should do that as a private sector. And I know we're going to say, okay, what is the government doing? But the government will talk for itself. But me speaking for the private sector, I feel like every woman where you are, if you're in a position of leadership, if you're in a position, even when you're in middle management, and you can support, you can mentor, you can train fellow women, then you should do that. So we also need to take individual ownership of that as women who are in certain positions. We should take that. We should also you should hold another woman and take it on, especially if you're thriving in the private sector.
Thank you very much. Professor, how do we ensure that this does not become extreme feminism and keep our norms as Africans, especially with the push of westernization? Because it is a very slow slope to go to. You are a social scientist, so this is an appropriate question to ask you.
Thank you, Timothy. And I don't think maybe that's even the right question to be asking, because business has been known for disrupting social norms. Norms only hold where there's no business, okay? Once the economics set in, the norms will normally give way. For starters, what I want to say is the dominance of women in SMEs is not really an issue of choice. It is a signifier of lack of opportunities elsewhere. So when you see African women and the youth running around, doing cross-border, doing informal, it's because there are no opportunities. We don't have jobs, we don't have industry, we have small economies. People are innovative, they're not going to starve. So because they're innovative, they find what they're going to do. Are they going to peddle shea nut? Are they going to sell Angara fish? Are they, these things we see. It actually celebrates the ingenuity of the African people, trying to cope in a context of limited scarcity. So we don't need to preach more to women to be better or to aspire better. They have done their best. What I thought this show would have focused on is to ask those who are in business what more they are doing, how intentional they are being about getting women in. And you see, we are coming from a political side where by the time the NRM came to power, there were no women in leadership. There were no women in cabinet. There had been only one woman, Teresa Oduka, in the Obote 2 parliament, out of the numbers of people who were there. So the government would have sat here and also preached to women to aspire to be better. But the government didn't do that. The government became intentional about how do we get women in. Hence, we started having programs of affirmative action in universities. Then there was affirmative action in parliament. Then it became 30%, I think, is it local council. So on the political side and in leadership and decision making, there's been a lot of intentionality in the space the state is responsible for. There's been intentionality in terms of the consolidated fund funding, the PFMA, Public Finance Management Act. There must be gender compliance and budgeting. So what we are trying to say, if you are to come to your issue of norms, one way you break norms is being intentional about breaking them, okay? So the government has been intentional at breaking those norms in ensuring women come into leadership, and also women get the budgeting is done not just with women in mind, but with issues concerning gender in mind. If you're going to draw money from the consolidated fund, of course, implementation for may do something, but at the point of passing, that is that. So the question now we are talking about accelerated action for gender equality. And I don't want to think it is a flamboyant elitist thing. It is a thing we have to work with. We begin by looking where are most of the women. Everyone here has acknowledged most of the women are in agriculture or in informal sector. So if we are to be intentional about accelerating action, we don't just celebrate those of us who are well educated and already CEOs. We need to, because our fathers took us to school and we went to the best universities around the world, so we are there, we shall occupy the spaces. There's no magic about that. The issue is for the majority who are at a certain level, whose SMEs are not living to see the second birthday, already they have proven to you that they have an entrepreneurial spirit, that they have a business acumen. How intentional can we be to keep them on, okay? And I think that's where we need to focus. So it's not an elitist discussion. Okay, Honorable has told us she makes sure in her, is it the rice farm? She had certain proportions of recruiting. But even this should not be a burden for only women to carry. We should be having business owners here. We should be having Nandala Mafabi here with the BCU. We should be having, and we should be asking how intentional are you? Whether you're running the Speak Resort hotels, whether you're running the Ntungamo Coffee Factory, and all of these people, we have had Honorable Genga Latigo, he has told us he's a farmer. We should be asking industrialists and business, Kasita here, and asking, what are you doing to intentionally include women? Not to just leave those who will succeed because they're already able, okay? So the issue is, until we have that discussion, we shall always have a group of women here talking about how women are very entrepreneurial and the rest. The issue is, of course, if we had a state which was not neoliberal, these would have been projects of the state. But the state has allowed the market to take over the business side of things. So how can those big players there, and not women, anyone who is there, do their bit to be intentional about women, about youth, about whoever else is there? And Timothy, I started thinking like this by, you know, you go on the continent on many, first of all, when you do a Google search on top-notch CEOs, like if you do top 10 in Africa, you'll find the dominance is South African, okay? Zimbabweans, whatever, but operating from South Africa. Once in a while you have a Kenyan, you also have Nigerians. When you go to that lower level of SMEs and you go to African conferences of women in business, it will be largely West African, okay? We don't feature that much. You'll find maybe a young African, whatever, but Ugandans are very represented in those places. We are very present in academia. We are very present in politics. Maybe that's where we are gifted. But we are not very, very present in terms of business. And it will be interesting when you go to West Africa or like Nigeria, you find people are really talking these things we're supposed to be talking. What are the things which keep women out of business? Lack of finance, everyone has acknowledged that. Lack of course, gender responsible budgeting. The government does that, but it's doing that for the people who draw money from the consolidated fund. I don't know whether the PFMA applies to private sector, but at least for public sector, they are trying to do that. Then, of course, we have issues of mentorship and capacity building. If I was to start a business today in Uganda, who do I go to handhold me and tell me that, okay, you will make these losses in the first 5 years, but please be resilient. You'll break through in the 7th year. And in doing so, whose money am I using? Who is going to give me a loan which will not be the kind of microfinance which will come and even take the land? There are issues of inclusive policies. And we've said already the PFMA really, and government tries to regulate its policies tend to regulate the public sector. But can we have policies that also regulate the private sector? To say, just like you have an act which says before a foreigner takes a job, at least locals would have been there. I know it's being violated, but at least the policy is there. But we need to have those kinds of policies. Then visibility and recognition. The ambassador has just listed the number of women who are there. Many of whom we don't know, but she knows because she's in private sector fund. So where do we get that information? So that if I know that I'm in mining and I'm in construction, this is the person to go to. We don't know them. So these are the kind of things that are holding women back. But largely the hand-holding, the mentorship, the financing, and all skills development. How do you run a business? How do you do bookkeeping? How do you get stamp duty? Now we are being told even selling an animal, we have to pay stamp duty. How are we going to go about that? Does it apply to the chicken? Does it apply to the goat? So the conversation is not to, it's good we celebrate those which are there, but we also need to focus on this layer because for some reason we have celebrated the top, assuming that people will catch up. But the catching up is not happening. So we need now to be intentional about going there. And that discussion will not only be for women. That's not a burden for women to carry. It is a burden for other big players in that sector to also say, how can we be intentional? And maybe after this panel, next time bring only the men who are heading big businesses. And they tell us what they are doing to be intentional about doing the thing. Of course, when capitalism, and maybe this could be the low-hanging fruit we should focus on, the more capitalism advances, the more it prefers female labor because it's cheaper and they are less likely to be, even if they defraud, they don't defraud that much. That's what the books say. They are less destructive. So this whole celebration of seeing women as top CEOs on the continent is also not a very big deal. It just shows us the level of capitalistic development we are on. But we want women to be targeted not because they are just lower risk, but because they are human beings who are deserving to occupy those spaces. So I think the conversation of accelerating, let us focus on where the majority is, because an acceleration means you're doing a step up. The government did this step up in political decision making. It has done its step up on gender equity budgeting. So can we see the other players also do this kind of step up and say, okay, if the coffee value chain is like this, it begins from the farm gate into international trade. People here have said women are very prominent at growing and at harvesting and processing. So you'll go to Kawempe, find them, they're the ones sorting the coffee. And okay, that is very good, it is employment. But the question is, even when they are being dominant at processing on the slopes of Mount Elgon, are they being given the rightful seedlings to grow the right coffee? You know, the other thing, of course, this country suffered is the destruction of extension work. So at the end of the day, everyone's grappling around on their own. But these big players, if you're BCU, if you're, I don't know which other coffee factories are there, tea growers, are these people given the right seedlings to work with? And even if they're in their land, you don't need to reduce them to laborers on your farm, but can they be brought on board as outgrowers? Do they have the right seedlings? Do they have the right support when it comes to harvesting and processing? And thereafter, what happens? They shouldn't just be cheap labor at the low side of the value chain. How intentional are those companies about bringing women all the way up? It could be a public company like UECDL or UMEME or whatever they are. But we need to see big business players or trade people asking or being tasked to explain what they are doing to be intentional about bringing women on board.
You spoke about low-hanging fruit. You also spoke about, you know, this conversation.
Yes.
Before we take a break, I think I want to put a two-folded question.
Yes.
This is a good conversation.
Yes, a very good one.
What happens after?
That is why I told you you needed the right people here.
Because we're also not the wrong people to have the conversation.
We are not the wrong people. Of course, what happens, everyone here is a docket holder. The minister is going to tell you what she's doing with GROW, with people with disabilities and everything. The person in parliament is going to continue pushing policies. She is in charge of the women's, okay, the manifesto, but the Women's League. So we expect some of the things coming from here to inform the NRM manifesto 2026, okay? We've been intentional on leadership. How intentional can we be on trade? And it was good to see the election of 2016. Every political aspirant who came on for the presidential position tried to posture around gender. Those who women need trade, women need maternal mortality reduced, women need, look at all of their speeches because we documented them. Yes, you have the number. So now, this conversation is not in waste. She's going to document it, and if it's not there, Big Sis, I will look for you. But I expect Mzee's manifesto to have something about this intentionality. Of course, she's in PSFA, which is a very, private sector foundation. It's a very big portfolio. Actually, the people we're talking about in trade are her people, okay? She knows them. I expect the next board meeting on Monday for her to say, what are you doing about intentionally bringing women on board? This is not just a journey for women who own a Delight and the Jukos who are in Stanbic. But it could also be a journey, a question to Mr. Issa Sechito of Kasita. What are we doing to make sure women in business downtown thrive? So you have the right people having the right conversation. But we also need to bring those who are really there, gatekeeping, to also answer to tell us what exactly they are doing. So this conversation is not in vain for me, the mere fact that we are having it. So we are going to accelerate, but from the different sectors. But we have to begin by raising awareness, because most people think the journey of gender equality is a journey of women, is a burden of women. It's not. It's a burden of everybody. Yes, thank you. Okay,
let me read some feedback that has come through. Good evening, Timothy and the panelists. I have issues when we talk about skilling women and girls. We train them in tailoring but never buy from them. We wear imported clothes and an organization trains them in liquid soap, but we buy detergent to clean the offices and establish supermarkets. We train them in hairdressing, but we don't even try to get them into our staff or go to their salons. We go to the high-end ones. If we are the staff of an institution responsible for skilling, why can't we trust their products and services then who should? Let's build confidence in them by being the first to buy their products and supporting for these services. This is George Anywari from Iganga, okay? Thank you for the show. I am enjoying it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the show, Timothy. Parents use children, for example, to dishonor a relative not wanted, fighting the battles of marriage or family. This opens a child to big issues when they're still young and develops wrong character and manners. Lack of privacy of parents and children. I am wondering where you were going with this conversation.
We are going very
Lastly, Stephen from Mbale, thank you for the program. However, why question asking Mr. Nyangweso seems not to get clear answers to me. Otherwise, I want to believe that some extent all these relevant stakeholders to attain the empowerment of women are not all involved. So appreciating the empowerment of women still finds resistance at family, clan, community levels, where men have always enjoyed the upper hand, having the monopoly of inheriting very important resources. Empowerment of women should be descended to local communities who are key in appreciating and promoting women empowerment. I am an advocate of women empowerment. Empowerment of women is struggling just like universal education because the beneficiaries have been brought into a round table of dialogue such as this today. We need to do it better. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll see how we move from there.
Thank you.
Street issues are my target. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. I'm in a plantation, but on a global mission. Internet ambition, full condition. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. Oro cash is gone. Netagayo karoni. Nigga mukafoni. Money in the zone. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. We are good.
With you and MTN together, our ambition is unstoppable.
We are what? Unstoppable!
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project that answer somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge. These are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport. If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
In all these years, we emphasize two words, wealth and jobs, and we try to waken our people up to show them where wealth and jobs come from.
The Parish Development Model, PDM, is a bold initiative that is reshaping Uganda's rural economy. By allocating 100 million shillings to each parish annually, PDM empowers households by unlocking opportunities for wealth creation.
This program will be maintained. Each year we send 100 million for the parish. If you get the 1 million, you can buy some goats, you can buy some pigs, you can buy even young cows.
Farmers are transitioning from subsistence farming to commercial agriculture, laying the groundwork for wealth creation and improved livelihoods.
This project started 11 years ago after an inspiration from His Excellency. And that time I was working as a taxi driver. I was doing that mass hour business in Soroti, and he was talking about how to improve household income.
With the PDM, you bring back the money after 24 months. But in the third year, you would get another 100 million paid back by those who got first.
The President's message is a mindset changer. Becoming rich does not mean you should have a lot of land, you should have a lot of education, you just need a vision and implement and start from where you are.
So therefore, this PDM is to get all of you out of poverty. That's why we said 100 million per parish per year.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. As we get to the last leg of this show, we're discussing accelerated action for gender equality, especially for women in business, even as we celebrate women this third month of the year, March 2025. We're looking at business, micro, small, medium enterprises, but also the corporate. And the biggest question and challenges have been mentioned earlier in the show. You can go to our YouTube channel, make your comment there, go to our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, or text us or WhatsApp us on the number 0709 60 25 92 for your comments. I'll be reading some of them in a short while. I'm joined by Professor Sarah, Ambassador Damali Sali, Honorable Ape Agnes Atim, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, and Honorable Helen Grace, who is a minister in charge of people with disabilities. But let me read these three messages so that we can get to our conversation. Thank you for the program, Timothy and the ladies. My question goes to Damali of PSFU. Some of us applied for the GROW loans from September. We are still waiting for the loans. Let her clarify on the delay issue to issue these loans, yet we finalize the paperwork. This is Sarah from Kampala. Okay, thank you, Sarah. This is James Osiro. Says, thank you for the show and moderating the show. Given the disproportionate impact of environmental degradation, what are women doing, particularly in the vulnerable country like Uganda? How can gender equality and women empowerment contribute to the effective, sustainable solutions to environmental challenges there? Okay, Professor Sarah Sali has had that one. Lastly, thank you, Timothy, for the show. I'm Ricky from Ntinda. My question is about women on doing business as sex workers. Is it really a business of empowering women and Uganda? Okay. Okay, that was GROW. Yes, that was GROW still. Okay. I'll read that one later. Professor, let me come to you. We talk, we have done everything talking here, which is really interesting. But the lady that is in a micro business, tomorrow morning, Honorable Lydia will be in Kawempe, but the women who are selling bananas, how do they break that glass ceiling to move to an SME? How do the SMEs move to medium? How do we break that ceiling? Is it possible, regardless of the stereotype?
Yes, thank you very much, Timothy. I think it is all a journey. And why am I saying it's all a journey? Even where they are has been a journey. You see, as the economy improves, opportunities show up. In the very, very long past, some of those opportunities were not there. But they are there now because, one, you will have people buying from them, but you'll also have, I mean, there are opportunities which are coming up in places you least expect. Traffic jam. People are selling. You know, in Lagos, you're told with the Lagos traffic, it is so jammed enough that you can buy, cook, eat. Now they're even washing cars. So in a way, yeah, they wash cars in the Lagos traffic because the traffic is that bad. So, but even in its badness, there are opportunities, okay? So what you're seeing as SMEs coming up, they are coming up because there's a market the operators of the SMEs have identified, a market which was not there. So what I get from your question is, how do we then expand these opportunities? Of course, when the community that earns some little money improves, then all these opportunities come up. So how do we expand this? Some of the people we are looking at largely, Ambassador Sally here with her private sector foundation, how can they kickstart the private sector which really grows an economy? How do we kickstart that private sector, regardless of what levels you have, small, medium, and big ones? How do we make them grow in such a way that they then provide opportunities for others? And I don't know how you negotiate with government, but it could be things like incentives for production, for doing business. It could be tax breaks. It's really an area I'm not really in. But you see, we have to think of how do you then grow a private sector so that that private sector can also offer opportunities for other people to tap into the economy, so that the Pepsi Cola person can take Pepsi Cola. It looks like they're taking Pepsi Cola, but they're also paying tax, they're contributing. Someone else is creating a job. My friend is campaigning somewhere in Rwanda, and he made a very good model of the local economy, and it all talks to opportunities. So that even in a community which is rural as Rwanda, west, or is it east, the farmer, the one who is selling Mabati benefits, the one who is selling maize, cabbages, growing cabbages benefits, people can go to school. So it's about how do we build an ecosystem and an economy within a sector so that we are not always dealing with money leaving the society, but growing. So you're talking about expanding opportunities. So I've talked about her, so she will tell us more about what they are doing to grow the private sector, or what more they need to do so that the businesses she has live to see their 5th birthday, 10th birthday, 20th birthday with expansion, not with containment. Of course, the other aspect is the government side, okay? So the government side is still responsible for all of us, even when we're in the private sector. So we're talking about inclusive policies and how far they can reach to support. They could reduce taxes, they could give tax breaks. But most importantly, we are suffering from lack of markets because our women produce the same things, our poor people produce the same things, sell to the same market, and the market is saturated. But there are initiatives government has signed up to, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And we've been told that many countries have signed up to this, but very few are trading there because of the principle of origin. So how do we support the principle of origin so that the ingredients so it is all talking about a value chain, that the raw materials originate from that area, they are processed from that area, and you sell. So if you're going to sell Nyanza textile mills, or we used to have Nyanza, I don't know what now it's called. I don't know whether Nyanza still exists. But then if you're going to sell fabric from Uganda, Naitil is the cotton from Uganda. Or did you import that cotton from Malaysia or from Singapore, and you're simply packaging it in Uganda, making uniforms, and then taking to AST? That one will not be accepted. But if you can prove that the cotton which went into the Naitil you're exporting was Ugandan, and from there maybe you are making garments and everything is from Uganda, it meets the principle of origin. And once it meets the principle of origin, you can trade. So what is constraining many countries, including us, to trade in the SCFTA is the whole aspect of principle of origin. And yet we have been told the biggest market for African things is going to be Africa. Because when we think about trading, we are all, and that's why in our tourism we are all making crafts, because we are thinking a Muzungu is going to come. But the Muzungu has a limit on how much he can buy because he has things like weight, except if he's a big importer. And also when they take them there, the basket may not make much relevance in someone's home, except if that person has lived and worked in Africa. So how can we ensure that beyond just looking to the Muzungu, we even produce to ourselves? Look at statistics from IFAD. Look at statistics from ADB. The biggest market for African products is Africa. It's on the continent. So how do we use the vehicle? And by the African Continental Free Trade Area has innate aspects of promoting women in business, women in agriculture, women in that. So how do we as member states leverage that and intentionally work? And we're not saying give women handouts. It may be women, it may be youth. Don't give them handouts, but make the environment right for them to play in those areas. Who is going to organize them? Is it private sector foundation? Is it Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development? Who is going to organize? So the opportunities are there, but the issue is to connect the beneficiaries to the opportunity. And that means we shall have to provide proper incentives so that it could be capital, it could be reduction of taxes, reduction on VAT for some people. I talked about the Nigerians doing so well in business. Their VAT is 6%, ours remains 18%. And each time you put this to the tax people here, they say because Uganda, you're a small population, so we can't afford to give you 6%, you have to be 18%. So if you're going to tax the same small population, which is earning, but also which is also largely carrying everybody's, because we all have a big dependency burden here. We're talking about many families beyond ours. So that thing will remain small, but you also create an incentive for tax avoidance and tax evasion. In other places, like, of course, Nigeria is a big population, 6% is not just because there are many, but it also enables many people to go into business. And just lastly, one thing I want to say, which their universities have done and we are yet to do, is they appreciate that not everyone's going to get a formal job. So they have what they call enterprise lines in universities. And largely it's around dressmaking or tailoring, design, hairdressing, cookery, and woodwork. So whether you're doing medicine or you're doing engineering, you pick one of these trades. And the mission is, while you're still waiting to be employed as a doctor, you'll need to eat, make agbada, make other things. So they come up with these things. So the people who are coming out to do what we see as SMEs here are people who are one, university graduates. They're also aware of how to do bookkeeping, how to do trade networks, social media, to market on Facebook. By the way, I applaud all the many Ugandans who are now trading on Facebook. So basically, you have those kinds of things. So that's why I'm saying that this conversation is not futile, but it's helping us to reflect on the areas we may need to touch to accelerate action. And the good thing is all the people I am with here are in the right place to accelerate. For us, we shall talk and do the research. But they all have a docket, which if touched even just by 5%, you'll have accelerated action. And that one.
Professor, before I leave you, something that Honorable Agnes spoke about.
Yes.
How do we get the men on board? Because we have drummed the women, drummed the younger, but there is that component that needs a complement and not competition. How do we bring them on board?
Actually, there is no competition. And I think it's wrong to think there's competition. Women are not competing with anyone. Women are simply trying to survive with the circumstances they have. That woman who is on the street selling things is trying to put food on the table for her children. She's not trying to compete with her husband. The women who are here in the different dockets they hold are simply trying to fulfill their careers, career dreams. They are not competing with anyone. So please, men out there, just know no one is competing with you.
Professor, let's not lose the point.
But to go back to the question,
yes.
No, it is all complementary.
How do we get the men to buy in, to complement, to come alongside?
By the way,
they can become a deterrent.
Timothy, most men are on board. The men who are not on board are having a problem. One, you're here. But also what I said is that the more capitalistic a society becomes, the more it looks to female labor because it's a cheaper labor force. So you can see those decisions are being taken by the many women CEOs you're seeing on the continent. So the men who are supporting women in those places don't see competition. They see good business, okay? There's research in the US which proves if you want work to be done, pick a woman who is a younger mother, because they are so focused, they don't have free time. They have to look after children. So elsewhere, men are on board, particularly businessmen are on board because they are looking at the profit margin. They are looking at the financial equation, the economic equation. Now, you come to us. I know Ambassador Sally did a big job celebrating the women who are up there. I think what she didn't do because you didn't give her time is also to celebrate the many men who are actually promoting women. Mr. Nelson of the Ntungamo factory, we were discussing with him recently and we're asking, what are you doing to put women in the different value chains of coffee? And he has a wonderful story. I imagine if you brought Honorable Nandala Mafabi, who would also tell. So people are doing this work. The issue is, can we find them? Can we celebrate them? There's nothing like men are not on board or men feel competition and men are scared. They are not. Most men moved away from that level long ago. Those who are still there just have a problem. They will soon catch up. But basically, if you want us to have them on board, some of these panels could be mixed. You could have another panel next Wednesday just of men to tell us what actually they are doing to promote women on board. So that's why I started by saying the discussion of gender equality is not a discussion for women. Getting women empowered is not a burden for women. It is a burden for everybody. All the girls who are here educated, their fathers did a job at putting them where they are, okay? So men have always been on board. The issue is I think, to reduce on the negativity of men who see competition. And by the men who see competition, the competition is between a man and a wife and a spouse. Men don't see competition with daughters, with mothers, with sisters. Actually, those layers of relationships are very supportive. They will kill for it, okay? So, and even then, if this thing of seeing competition is when relationships are beginning, when people are young, when marriages stabilize, the husbands are the biggest promoters. So I think maybe we need to have a conversation of how men are already on board.
Okay.
Yes.
Ambassador, let me come to you. One of the things she mentioned opportunities, she mentioned, I want to get to the point of mindset. We have this lingering mindset that 1 to 3 years business dies, micro businesses, corporate is concerned at how to break even to get into the business, especially when they want to leave the corporate world there. How do we navigate that mindset? Because it's also an opportunity for us to get into accelerating business and trade in this country.
Yeah. Great, thank you. But maybe let me start by answering the question that was online about
grow.
Grow, yes, and the viewer, we thank you for the question. So the Grow loan is Grow is a project that has a loan facility. It has a scaling component. It has a huge component on policy. So we, PSFU, are only implementing a smaller part of the Grow project. The bigger part of the Grow project is being implemented by the Ministry of Gender, actually, because it's a government project. We were delegated to, implement the private sector aspects of it. So the Grow loan facility is a 5-year program. We've just started, literally, I think over the last 6 to 7 months, to start giving out this money. We onboarded, again, because we're private sector, we're working with the private sector, i.e. 6 banks, Ugandan banks, which are actually the ones giving out the money. So far, in these 7 or so months since we started, they've disbursed 50 billion Uganda shillings to women entrepreneurs over the last 7 months. But I want to tell the viewers, it is a 5-year project. So if you haven't accessed the finance facility, yes, it's 5 years. And as the money is being disbursed, the banks have to follow their own rules within which they disburse. And they have to follow those parameters. So even after they're disbursed, it has to be disbursed in a clear way, in a systematic way. So not everyone who applies to the banks is immediately going to get the cash. They're going to follow a process, because we're also disbursing the money in tranches, because it's a 5-year program. So the viewer who's asked that question, if you applied for the bank, they haven't disbursed the money to you yet, they will. It's a 5-year program. So, and that's where the money is going. But in addition to that, I think I would like to say, over the last 7 or so months that we've started this financing facility, there are some good things that we should really celebrate. I like to celebrate things. So, one, what we've seen actually, because the Grow loan is going to women businesses. So the ownership of the business has to be about 51%. Some banks require collateral. And I like your aspect, which is the men are on board. The women who don't have collateral are getting collateral from their husbands, actually, to access this growth financing facility. We were surprised with that finding, that the men are availing the collateral where a bank requires collateral, because they have to follow the bank processes. There are some banks that don't require collateral, but there are some that do. And the men are availing their collateral on behalf of the women so that they can access this financing facility. So there are some men on board. We should celebrate those men, you're right. And, but I think what I wanted to emphasize is the fact that it's a 5-year program. It's just started. It's just 7 months old. Do not give up. Do not lose patience with your bank. They have to do it systematically. You may have applied and there are already 1,000 people before you whom they have to go through systematically. And it's a 5-year program. We've only been implementing it for 7 months. And PSF is just, this is a government program. We should really give credit to the government of Uganda. It's the government of Uganda that's availing this to the women in business. So that should be celebrated. Regarding whether, maybe the examples I gave were mostly, women who are elite and, highly educated and, invested in them. But I wanted to give some examples of also women who won't be considered elite. Mama Brevard is not elite. She's there. We should celebrate her. So maybe we should call some of these women here actually as well. Bella Wine, that's not elite. Mama Fina is not elite, and she's thriving in whatever business that she happens to be, doing. So I wanted to emphasize the whole celebrate. It's important for people to see successful people who are like them, for them to aspire to. And Professor Sari has been talking about it quite a lot, that a lot of the women who are here were supported by our fathers. We were supported by our brothers to actually be here. The family environment matters. The family is the first mentor, the first inspiration for anyone, whether it's a male or a female. So as parents, even parents, they should definitely do a bit of their job when they are, raising the kids to do that. I wanted to go to, again, a point that Professor Salidi talked about, where she said, okay, let's talk about the major sectors where these women are. We want to accelerate. You can't accelerate everything. You have to prioritize. And I would say the sectors that we should definitely prioritize are tourism. That's where most of the women are. They're both at the bottom of the value chain and at the top of the value chain. So we need to prioritize that. We need to look at agriculture. The women are very much on the bottom of that value chain. We need to prioritize the creative sector. It's amazing how many women are in the creative sector. Huge number of women are in the creative sector. Actually, if you see most of the shows, we were talking about it as women the other day, that if you look at most of the shows that at Serena, you look at the females are almost leading the music industry right now, actually. If you think about Shiba, you think about, like there are many. And the men, they do a few shows. So we are, but anyway, we are huge in that value chain. If you in the creative sector, if you think about the fashion, the hairdressing, the makeup, everywhere. So that sector has to be prioritized. Trade, especially on the informal domestic trade, informal cross-border trade, but also the SMEs. There are a lot of SMEs who are women. That sector has to be prioritized. The last one we need to prioritize is mining. There are a lot of women who are unfortunately at the very bottom of this particular sector. It's highly dominated by women. They're the ones who are, digging up stuff. They go there with their kids, by the way. So it's we need to prioritize this. They are at the bottom of that value chain. We don't have a lot of them in SMEs or hub. So those are 5 sectors that I would say that for Professor Sally, those would be. Then as PSFU, you were talking about policy. What happens now? PSFU, our mission is policy and advocacy, and we are always engaging with the government in different sectors on where we are advocating for, pushing for that policy. We are also the focal point for the private sector for the ACFTA. So we sit in those spaces at the ESC, at the Secretariat, to push policies, again, that are supporting of the private sector and the business environment. And in that aspect, and I think, Timothy, you did ask, why are our businesses dying in 3 years? What can we do? So we, PSFU, working with the Ministry of Trade and UNBS and several other trade agencies, we are pushing for a startup policy. And the policy in its general point is that we should not treat a little SME that's 1 year old, 2 year old, the same way we treat a Mukwano. There have to be different parameters for them. Even their taxes should be different. Even at the point at which you tax should be different. So we came up with this startup policy, again, working with the Ministry of Trade. And there is a draft startup policy. I think it's about to go to cabinet to be approved, but it has those parameters that an SME that's 3 years old, that is local, that is looking at local products and employing Ugandans, maybe they should get a tax rebate. Maybe their cost should be this amount. Maybe their PAYE should be. we are trying to make sure that we categorize that, because we are an SME economy actually, and we know they are dying after 2-3 years. So what can we do? And that's what our policy is actually supposed to cover. That we do have the draft. I think I'll share it with you because it's not fully yet. Then also I wanted to talk about there's something more that the government is doing in procurement. Government procurements, they try to do affirmative action where any procurement that is below 30 million Uganda shillings is prioritizing women and youth. So if it's, if there's an advert out there, whether by the local government or wherever in government, and it is below 30 mil Uganda shillings, then it's prioritized for women and youth. So that's a good affirmative action that government is doing. Of course, there has to be a lot of information that goes out there for people to know. So people have to know that this is prioritized for me to be able to apply it. Then additionally, as PSFU, we have the gender equality seal. So this gender equality seal, we work with the UN agency to categorize the parameters that a private company, if it meets those parameters, we will give it a seal. And we've been engaging actually Ministry of Gender to say that even in government, when government procurements are up and these companies come to you, can you ask them for the gender equality seal? Can that be part of the procurement criteria, at least given a weighting? So that, because then if that company has a gender equality seal, it means they've passed a certain level, and therefore they should be encouraged to be able to, the incentive for them to comply, because there is a cost to everything in private sector. But if the gender equality seal enables me to have a higher weighting than my competitor when I'm bidding for a government thing, then that should be something that I aspire to. So that's also something that we're trying to push, because as PSFU, we also want the private sector to be involved, but there has to be an incentive. So I struggle to get the seal, I get it, but then so what? So that's another thing that we are trying to do. And also, if I may add, as PSFU, we are very gender sensitive. Our chairman is a man, but the vice, and there's a policy that if the chairman is a man, then the vice should be a female, and they are voted by themselves. We have a 12 board. A 12-people board, so they do that. Then if you look at our C-suite, it's 50-50. That's why I'm even sent here to talk on behalf of the PSFU. Then also, if you look at our ExCo, I think we have actually more women on ExCo. The men are complaining. We have more women on our ExCo than the men. So sometimes we shout them down. But yeah, that's all I think I have to say. Thank you.
Mindset.
Mindset. Your question. Yes. So on the mindset thing, I think what we need to do is multi-pronged. One, the family unit has to do a lot of work. I think, and Professor Sally did talk about it, we are influenced, I think most of the women in those spaces are influenced by their fathers, their mothers, their aunties. Because when you're growing up, that's the molders of your mind are there. That's where they start. Then that foundation literally either breaks you or builds you. So the family unit can't delegate or decide to delegate this problem to schools or to corporates or to other mentors. That has to start at home. Then also, and I did talk about it, we have to inspire. So those who were there, the women who were there, the men who were champions of women who were there, we need to be talking to these women. We need to mentor. We need to talk about it. We need to support it. We need to be able to celebrate those women who were successful. We need to be able to not speak in stereotypical ways when we are speaking, even in meetings or communicating. Yeah. And it has to be a continuous sensitization, because you have to continuously break it down. You always have to continuously break it down. So the mindset has to be, it's a continuous process. It doesn't really end. But I say that the most cost-effective and impactful is to start at home, because the way you mold your child is what is going to make them or break them. So if you mold your sons to respect your daughters, they will grow up being champions of women. It's just natural. Then if you treat your daughters and tell them you have the same brain as your brother, give them the same opportunities as their brother, they will just grow up thinking it's normal to do this. I got the same opportunities in our house. Like, I didn't even think I was a girl. Like, it didn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. We just got the same opportunities in education. So when I go out there, I never think, oh my goodness, I'm a woman. I just say, well, I'm competent, I'm qualified, I'm going for that job, I can do it. It never occurs to me that I'm a woman and I'm going to apply, maybe I'll get it or not. Because when I was being molded, that difference wasn't given to me in terms of my capabilities, in terms of what I can achieve, in terms of the opportunities that are available to me in the house. So it never occurs to me to limit myself mentally. But that starts at home. So as parents, that has to happen. We need to take that personal responsibility and do that for our children, for our sons. so that when they come out here, they're the champions. Actually.
Thank you. Dr. Appiah, when we come to especially legislation, policies, something that Damali mentioned there, you have done well, especially on gender and succession bill, all these bills coming, even the family bill and marriage that is there. But there are impediments of land and financing. How can Parliament support this acceleration of gender equality, especially in the business sector?
Thank you very much. And I want to appreciate the discussion now, what can we do? And I think that's very helpful, that we usually talk and really don't take it on our lament, and at least today I'm seeing some celebrations happening, but usually it's a lamentation, and I think this is great, Timothy. So I want to start from that point of policy, that we've got very gender responsive and progressive policies and laws already in place. What we lack is actually information, giving that awareness and information to the population and to the women themselves. For example, she was talking about the provision of procurement. We have a PPDA law that gives 30% of any procurement in government has to go to women. But I doubt whether the women in business are actually aware of that. And if we have ever taken that, opportunity to actually hold some of these agencies accountable. For example, there was a time I met Alan Kagina of UNRA at that time, and asked all this road construction that takes almost 3/4 of our money, where are the women in it? And of course, there is no data. We're a country that really needs to work so much in disintegrating the data, so that we know if we have a PPDA law of 30%, where is it? Where is that mechanism for us to hold ourselves? Not this time government or whatever, because we are talking about women in leadership. I always like it so much when we count how many of us are where, ministers and what. But what is the dividends of these numbers of women who are in these positions? And so I think in terms of laws and policies, we've got the best gender responsive laws. You have heard about the gender sealed. I sit in budget committee. We are always asking, where is your certificate, gender certificate? And they are very smart that when they're bringing now the ministerial policy, all the words will be gender responsive. And if you are marking from the words, they are 100%. But if you go to the figures, then you ask, so where is the gender that we were talking about? So I think access to incredible information and raising awareness to the business community, not only to the women, actually, the whole business community, as Professor put it. These business owners, are they actually aware that women are supposed to have 30% of the procurements? So for me, that is one element that we need to focus on. Now, we also have this element. I think you were talking about our women in Kawempe who are selling the bananas and all that. Do you know how much pancakes that our ministries and agencies eat every day, including Parliament? A lot of money that goes every day in pancakes and in the bananas and all that. But our systems actually structured in such a way that it will recognize that woman who is selling bananas and pancakes in Kawempe to be able to access that particular opportunity. So for me, I think in terms of policies...
Honorable, how do we couple that? Because she has a startup policy. She's under 30 million shillings.
Yeah.
The taxation bracket, how do we marry those two, that woman on the street is benefiting?
I think that is where I'm saying that we need to create an avenue of information. For example, at private sector foundation, or even in our ministries, department and agencies, to be putting out information out there that there is this opportunity to supply the pancakes. Our biggest problem actually is the other bit of it, which is corruption. These agencies actually know that this is supposed to be done like this, but somehow we don't do it in the right way. So for me, in terms of the discussion here, we need to be looking at the implementation of already the existing laws and the policies and that conducive environment that government of Uganda has already created for women in business. We start from the implementation and engage all the stakeholders. In fact, I will also request you to, in one of the discussions, particularly in these business issues, call people of PPDA and ask them in their reporting or in their data, how many women-led businesses have actually gotten contracts to supply government or to do roads or to do all these other issues. Another issue in terms of implementation, I think it also came out here, is basically around business development services. The reason why we have so many of our businesses, you know, not making it to the second or third or whatever years that we normally talk about all that in every discussions about women in business. But there has to be a deliberate effort to ensure that, like she's talking about that policy and all that of startups, it is one thing to have money to put in a business, but is another to go and actually make that business work. And all that person needs is actually, how do I keep my records, financial records? How do I, you know, get the right product? Is there profitability? Simple things. And so people start, when you see somebody selling bananas, all of us are going to sell the bananas. But do we even know whether we are making profit or not? Like when I was coming here, I saw some young boys carrying bananas in a tray, very heavy, and I think they started walking since morning up to now. The banana is already getting bad. I'm not sure whether they have actually counted that if they sold all that, they would make profit. Simple business kind of skills that our people need. So, and some of these things actually do not require rocket science or a lot of capital or something. What we need is just that one point that will reach and say, we've got to do this, and this is the simplest way we can do it. I think we've talked about mentorship as well, that some of these things need somebody to hold your hand and to help you with it. Okay. There is this law as I think a policy of Bubu. Where did it go? Yes, buy Uganda and build Uganda. You know, we have very good phrases, very beautifully crafted things. But somehow, our own, that's why I think somebody mentioned it here, all of us are to blame on how we have actually fallen short of supporting our small women in businesses. Because if we enforce that really, maybe we would have been at another level. Because most of the businesses, as we had said earlier, are actually things that we grow here and we see and we love, you know, using it or buying it, but we are not also being deliberate as consumers, not this time government or PFC, you know, as consumers, like us here, what is it that we buy, which is actually ours, really made, you know, from Uganda and from our women down there. And then there's been a discussion around pay issue. And when she was talking about women in corporates and manufacturing and all that, there's been a discussion around the minimum wage. And as a country, I think we've understood minimum wage in a way that we want to protect the employers. That, oh, if we put minimum wage, the employers, with the investors, we call them investors, right? They'll run away. Not knowing that actually the majority of the people who provide that casual labor, which is cheap, and of course we want it to continue being cheap, are actually women. And there's been a discussion around that. And I think for me, as government, I would think that that is another area that we can be deliberate and say no to the cheap labor and no to this, labor where majority are women, let us put a minimum so that every other woman would be able to have a decent pay, to be valued in some of these spaces and all that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Honorable Lydia, as a leader of the Women's League, what have you done, what are you doing, and what more can you do?
First of all, we are glad that the Housing and Population Census of 2024 has given us a clear picture of where the women are. We are 53% of Uganda's population, and that gives us the numbers. And then we've been able to disaggregate it in terms of the women, the poverty map, where are they? And then where we also been able to map the settlements. You know, when you talk about the country's map, where are the women? Most of them, if you look at our country's structure, they're on the village and the parish. So when my colleagues talked about the parish development model, that's what informed us to lower the government unit up to the parish. And in many parishes in Uganda, including where I come from Bale City, the parish has 12 villages. And we've been able to plan so that a woman can be able to walk to the parish center or the parish office and go home, because it's within the radius, the geographical radius of 12 villages, so that she can do her home chores, attend to her family, and if she needs to question or to attend meetings of accessing support for development, she can actually walk, say, okay, about distance, and within the community. But most important, we've been also be able to analyze data and do modeling to make sure that a woman is lifted. There's a lot of multi-pronged approach to make sure that we catch that woman that has been outside the financial sector, because many of them have been outside the economy, and they're the majority, and they're the ones with the energy in working. So they just did, these are the ones we're talking about, those who carry the basket, who carry peanut butter. That capture, they move around on the streets and the vendoring. I've just come from Kawempe. There's a lot of the night industry on the veranda. I mean, on the roadside, cooking chapati, cooking, frying cassava for people who are returning home from factories and stuff. That cooking oil and 1 pack of baking flour, the capital is hardly 200,000. Now we are talking about 1 million. So from her 200,000 capital to 1 million is going to move her from the moneylessness struggles under the poverty bracket to the 1 million, so she can improve her small space on the veranda and be able to do the chapati or to do the fries or to rear the chicken and be able to join the money economy and grow. And that's where the grow will find her. She'll be able to grow and the grow will find her. And women are very resilient. They have very good saving habits and they know how to do their money. This financial literacy training that Honorable Minister is talking about, the moment they know how to do the financial record keeping, then they'll not be busybodies. They will know that they are working for a profit and be able to get the investment on one side and say the balance is what she will eat or the profit. So that she's able to know that this, if you have invested so much, you are not entering the margin. That has been what has been like, because many of them work and they are not so sure whether they are working for profit or they are making losses. They are so busy, making chapati and mandas. But for now, this training on financial literacy, bookkeeping and records, and then that initial investment, at least under the parish development model, leave alone the OEP and other initiatives. They are in circles. Women are in circles. You have heard about the small boxes? I have found some stories in Kawempe about box savings. The saving culture. The saving culture is so important so that you can save and also grow. And these dynamics have helped them to even begin now learning how to get collateral. I mean, women are owning land. I've told you that you be patient because we've come a long way. 10 years ago, if you look at the statistics 10 years ago, a very small percentage of Ugandan women owned land. Because now the policy on land has been liberalized, it is open to the market. you can buy or you can exchange land tomorrow title. If you go and check in the lands ministry today in the registry, you find that the percentage of women owning land is increasing. They begin with a small plot, a small shop, and then the title. So we are teaching them on how to even title their land, to own their land, so that they are able to be empowered and have collateral. So give Ugandan women another 10 to 15 years with this environment of stability without running around with the children on the back. They will be taking off as a lift, because first of all, they've learned that you cannot go it alone. Many of them are within circles. They're in groups. But the majority of them are on the village. So government is cognizant of this. So that's why they've moved the lowest administrative sector to the parish. That's why the majority of the women are. And if they come up organized with capital, they will join the money economy. When they join the money, just go to the borders, you see what's happening there. They are crossing borders.
How do you provide, and I like you talked about the box, you talked about circles.
Yes.
How do you provide social security for that saving? Because you have NSSF for the corporates. How do you have social security? Because we've heard of the treasurer has run with the money, the chairman is no longer there. How do we protect that mobile money? How do we help them save more?
Well, if there can be a money heist in the central bank, what about this box? My name, that's for another day. But these are lessons learned, because now you see, and Honorable Asemo can be able to share with us, before COVID, and maybe you can also help me to talk about the IA, artificial intelligence and the technology. Before COVID, about 40% of Uganda's women owned phones. Now, because of the financial transactions using phones, the mobile phones, the access to mobile phones, these small ones, they call katochi. In Kenya, it's called the Mulika Mwizi, you know, that small phone. Many of women have been able to get those small phones because of the financial transactions. And the parish development model is now logging money on the telephone. I hope you've been following. There is already a model, an app called Wendy, which now takes the money direct to the phone of the beneficiary. So people have their phones, and that's now building. Before they didn't have a phone, now everybody does. If you go and check, because even during the COVID, money was being sent to, they did the mapping of the extreme vulnerable. Let me call them the vulnerable. And again, there were women. So money was being wired directly. The 100,000, you remember, was being hired directly to one of the Prime Minister's launch. It was her first task when she became a Prime Minister. And the minister. So that first launch was sent to phones. Now that has been growing. So financial literacy, the box might end up on the phone now if they improve on the access and literacy levels of technology. Now maybe money is safer on the phone than this box, which they can easily break. But again, there are challenges of cyber security, cyber insecurity, and cyber theft. And if it can happen in some central bank, there's a haste. What about an old woman in my village in Naboya, in Mbale City, where I come from? So it's work in progress. We should be able to secure them. But also I've realized that the banking sector, and maybe our sister from the private sector can tell us, the banking sector keeps improving, and they have a lot of products, including now mobile financing, wiring money, improving technology. These days, you do not online banking. You do not have to go to a bank manually to get money.
Okay.
It's online. So we should be able to roll out products. Recently, let me conclude this. Recently, I was in, I'm interested in maybe now it's an opportunity to talk about issues that we learn. In Uganda, we have what they call periodic markets. Do you know about them? The Baganda call them Obutale Omububulo. Every month or every week, like from her area, there are people who gather in a particular locations and take cattle, those market days. This is a unique module in Uganda. Or in every month or every period, I'll carry my goat, I'll carry my chicken, I'll carry my cattle and go. It's known. Then people come and buy. We need to develop, and the majority of women you will find them at the market days. So financial institutions should just roll out their mobile vans, money vans, and go, and you have bought something, you've sold the cow 4 million shillings, why are you moving 4 million shillings in your bag? It will be stolen from you. So you go there, financial vans should roll out, bullion vans should go to these market days and pick money for people and go and bank it for them. If you have an account in the housing finance, you have an account in the centenary, you don't have to carry your money from that market day. We are still running a cash economy, but over that time, we should roll it out. Because on the market day, I've realized people move with a lot of money, and that's a cause of insecurity. But that's why we are catching data from women on how they are picking experience on doing business and moving to market days. Soon, we should have very well done stop centers at borders, so that you go and to Weyale, you go to Nimule with your luggage, with your goods, sell across the border, come back. Before you know what, you're now crossing with a passport to do business.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, lastly with you, something Professor mentioned, when you move in some parts of the country, the articrafts, the mats, all these things, when you move to the north, people making peanut butter, the brooms, and the prices fluctuate according to how you can negotiate. How can government protect these people, especially that they're making the same products, but also protect them to provide market? Lastly, the conflict between government agencies. There's PDM in the central business area, but there's also KCCA picking people that Honorable Lydia is talking about. They're now making chapati and pilau, but KCCA will go and pick them up. How do we resolve that to encourage the economy?
Yeah, I want first of all to say, I know I'm coming last, almost with 4 minutes. I hope I'll manage. I think you have cheated me a lot. I have to bring to you, because I'm a very frank person. I want to start by saying, Timothy, the economy of Uganda is run by women. Go anywhere, and you'll find the women are running families. The men have decided to keep away school fees, taking them to school, and whatever. Through those businesses you keep on talking of OD. OD, all of us here, we book in buckets. And that's good money. Those women earn more than the teacher who is doing a formal job. Those women you see there do a lot of work. I have been in Amuru. Go to Kamdin. They now do value addition. You find the OD is made but packaged in a way that it attracts any other person to buy. So for me, I look at this as a hope that there is already an initiative that the women are going ahead in doing business. In this grow, where does private sector who partners with us pick a woman? We pick you and try to register your business, and it's free of charge under UNBS. We give you a registration, because when you are registered, then you are able to get into the tax area, and then you are able to do employment of other people. So you can see that the training capacity that the private sector does not only do finances, but they train these women first, their capacity to improve from where they have been done. I can use an example. I think it was Boise. The women who were selling Kabaragala, we are trained to do cakes. And now they are making wedding cakes. Who says a wedding cake is cheap? It's not cheap. Those party cakes, they are not cheap. So when we are talking about business, for me, I've been trained that any business, as far as it brings money on your table and you make a profit, you are good to go. How you do now the improvements to build yourself to the Barbaras, to build yourself to Adieris. Now you find a person like Adieri in Northern, in Noya, is training our women to get to better businesses. So I wanted just to bring to your point that, you see, when you talk about PDM, PDM is only looking at 33% population. 33% only, meaning where are the other 60-something%? It means they are in a better position of business. So when we are looking at PDM, PDM has improved. She has talked about those boxes. Government of Uganda is a liberal economy because we don't do business as government. We have to use other sectors. And that's why our money goes to those banks of centenary. We go to finance trust, we go to BFCU, and we give them to help us run the business. Because as government, we don't do that kind of business. But we are targeting the women. You find in DFC there's already a women in business purposely training those women to do business. Some of us have entered into some of these economies to do our own businesses. We have this soft business where you put your money and it grows. You don't need to be sitting every day to watch it. It is growing, and that's business. I make my money every month. I know I have an extra some millions coming in before I wait for Parliament to pay me, so I can grow it. So that's a business attitude that is growing, and our ministry is struggling to see how we can move on to this. There are issues of KCCA capturing our people. These are issues of, because they think these are dirty people or doing whatever. But that's why government came up with the markets, to say let us create spaces where the women can be, Nakawa, whatever. In the same project, we want to build places where we know that the women, when I have my period, I can go and bathe. When I have a baby, it can stay there and play. It can, as I do the business, this other side. And I want to tell you, those women are rich. They have the money. Sometimes when we look at them doing these small businesses, we think that there is no money. Personally, I've done small businesses. Even if I'm a minister now, I have done small businesses. I educated 6 children through the small businesses. But through those small businesses, I started from retail. I went into wholesale, buying my millet, my cassava, pack them there, see how to market them, and you package and you sell them. That is all business. But I have never borrowed. I have never gone broke since I started work as a teacher, and now that I'm a minister. I have never cried to go running around and say, I think, Lydia, you have never seen me as one of those who cries around. Because I have that mind of business. And when I get into the training and I see government running this, I think we're in the right direction to support the woman. Because when you support a woman, you support a family. When you do business as men, you know what happens. You put additions. And those additions bring you more problems. The expenditures come in, and you prefer even to spend it out more than spending it where? At home. In the house. These ladies who come in to do business, that accelerated gender, I am telling you, a woman with money breaks all the norms you have talked about, your culture, the issues of tradition, whatever. When you have money, it is money which talks. And I'm telling you, when you talk of acceleration of gender, we have seen women sponsoring functions. She has talked about the creative industry, which is also in our ministry. We have promoted the women. You can find in UCC, that is the cultural whatever. There's a man as a chairman, but we made sure a woman takes over, a young lady. So you can see that there's a lot of efforts that government is trying to come on board. The issues of KCCA are under discussion, because I think the president in this campaign said, why do you tax my women? Because if a woman has carried Bogoya, tomorrow she's coming back with the same Bogoya. Why are you removing 1,000 before even I sell? And this is what KCCA has been running in many of the towns. So the president said, no, you shouldn't tax them. If I'm selling Muchomo, if I'm selling my Gonja, let these people do that work. And then now when they come to the other level of small business, you can now get in to try to get what? The taxes. But the markets have been put in place to support us from getting out from these towns chasing us around as women with our small Bogoya and everything. But I want to say PDM is going to be the real stone that is going to help the women to come up. And already the money has gone more to the women in this sector of the 30%. They have gone beyond 30%. They are at about 40% getting that money. They are beating the youth, and they're also beating the men, and then we, the disabled people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let me read some feedback. Timothy, thank you for the show. In the village I live in Kitugum, there are only two homes with TV sets, and yet there are more than 300 women who are not watching your beautiful show. How do we expect all these good ideas being expressed to reach the rural woman when we are while we're talking about them? Okay, thank you very much. Timothy, thank you for the program. I would like to disagree with Professor Sarah. Truth is, the elite women sit in their offices, imagine all is well at the grassroots, but the situation is different. Many women imagine that gender equality is actually equality of men and women, yet even men are not naturally equal. So some women, not men, gender equality is a competition between men and women. So when I hear professors saying that almost all men are on board. It sounds like she's whipping men to get on board. Please try to get the grassroots so that people can understand what gender equality means, so that it can achieve the good causes we're talking about. This is Peter Iniganga, okay? Wilson says, women have been elevated and educated, but not been able to told about work. You share responsibility at home with husbands, like developing a country. So women work and still think their money is their money alone. So why should men allow their wives to go to work if they hide their earnings? Wilson from Kamuli, interesting submission there. Thank you for the show. Is gender about women only? Interesting, okay. Hi, Jordan from Gayaza. My view is, how can we be successful whenever I get a chance, it fails in a few days? So I would like to know from this show, okay? Thank you very much for the messages that have come through. Many more there. I am going to give each a minute to give parting shots. I'll start with Professor. I'll go to Damali, Honorable Lydia, and finally the Honorable Minister. Professor.
Yes. Do I answer the questions? I just leave the question then go to parting.
You can make a comment about the question.
Thank you very much. Gender equality is not just about women, it is about the missing gender.
Yes.
So we are focusing on women because they are the underrepresented. Tomorrow, if we are having the men underrepresented, we shall focus on the men, we shall focus on the elderly, we shall focus on the youth, whoever is there. Then most men are not on board, many men are on board. So there could be men who are not on board, as I said, so the competition can be maybe in early couples, but as the realities of life set in, many people get on board. Because at the end of the day, when men and women are out there, question of competition is not what's on their mind. It is about offering the service, about living your careers. You wake up in the morning to go and work because you have needs. And the competition is not one of the needs that motivates the person to go and work. People have higher needs than that. Then to go to my parting shots, we have talked a lot, and I just want to make three things. Of course, I like the issue of the PDM, and I am the one person who believes that if we can, we've done financial inclusion very well, but if we can focus on agro-processing, PDM pillar number 1, it would help us solve a lot of the value chain and limit losses in agriculture. Number 2, we are talking about the National Curriculum Development Center has a committee which Parliament requested for the anticipated skills, it is called the anticipated skills needs anticipation committee. And mainly what they are doing is to forecast 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, what are the skills that are going to be required? Yes. And they work with a dropout age of 16. So assuming that on average, Ugandans drop out at age 16, what jobs do they do? You're going to be a Rolex person. So if you're going to be a successful person flying Rolex on the street, what skills do you need? Bookkeeping, whatever, tracking your business records. And most of us, Timothy, even us who are educated like this, one thing that makes us fail in business is we don't keep records. And also when you try to keep records and you realize how much money you have put in a thing which is heading nowhere, you get frightened. So we don't keep records by choice. So we need hand-holding. And so that is very important. And lastly, I think my message goes to everybody here, but largely to Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, because as a person in charge of the women's wing of a ruling party now and in future, the mandate you hold is a very big mandate. Luckily, you're very well internationally exposed on the continent. You know how Uganda is faring vis-a-vis Zambia. You're always in these spaces. How do we make the African Continental Free Trade Area work for women in Uganda? This is a burden that if you did very well, I would be happy and I would retire happily. And you're not being in the government and cabinet is not the issue. The issue is you're holding a bigger mandate than those who are there. Please use it very well. Next time when you come here, you'll tell us how much we're exporting to SFT.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ambassador Damali.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to talk about 3 things. One, you did ask me about mindset, and I took a second thought about it. And the one group I missed out was media. Media, you guys, TV, radio. I would say if you could focus on business, if you could focus on, you know, these discussions being more diverse, but also more frequent. They shouldn't only be done during, you know, March, Women's Month. I'm paraded out here actually every March to come now and talk. Then they forget the women. Like, what happens to us? The 11 months of the year, why don't we talk? But also, I think the media tends to focus on politics, football, entertainment. You have to make the center of the conversation. I could give it equal. Put it on your priority for politics, football, entertainment, business. If your shows do business and discuss business, it will change the mindset because the people watch the TV, the people listen to radio. So the media also has a huge role to play on mindset because you influence a lot. You get to every village. Your radio stations, actually, radio has a higher penetration than TV. So the media also has a lot to do to focus on business. If all your adverts, everything you do is just purely politics, football, and entertainment, then again, the mindset won't be business. That will affect the people. So media, I'm putting it down to you. I thought about it and said, you know, Timothy, I'm going to, you know, throw it in his face. Then there was that issue about the boxes. And I like the idea where it was, almost everyone with a phone knows how to use mobile money. No one even ever teaches anyone how to use mobile money, but they do know how to use mobile money. And I've seen mobile networks and fintechs actually now try to exploit that area. They're offering health insurance. Like you can save a little 1K every month in case your child gets sick. They're offering that as a thing. They're also offering funeral, what do they call it, funeral services things, where in case you die, you'll have your, you know, your coffin. So the private sector is actually taking a lead in that financial access, especially on other services like health insurance, like savings, like, so don't worry too much. After some time, these boxes will disappear because they will start using financial services through the telecoms, through the fintechs. That journey has begun. So the private sector, in a way, is leading that. The government doesn't have to involve itself in this private business. Let's allow the private sector to take that. Then I wanted to just, the last short I would like to say on behalf of PSFU, there is a project that we've just started, again, with the government of Uganda, Ministry of Finance, and funded by the World Bank. It's called Investment for Industrial Transformation for Employment. This project is not targeting women, but I thought I should say it out here. It's targeting everybody, and it's supporting companies, especially SMEs, that are in the export business, and we're trying to support them to be able to brand, to market, to also industrialize. So there is also capital. So it's called Export Farm Support. That component is called Export Farm Support, and anyone who is interested, man or woman, can go on our website, and it's called Invite. So they'll be able to see that. That's an opportunity I thought I should say, even though it's a women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Ape.
Thank you very much. I think one key issue that we need to take from here is that as a country, we run a private sector-led economy. And we recognize in this show that women are the major contributors in this private sector space. And therefore, I would urge all of us, the ministries, the business people, the church, everybody, let's invest in women, businesses, let's value them, and let's pay for them, let's pay for their work or their services as any other businesses. Okay. Let's stop the prejudice that these are women, these are small businesses. If you need a pancake, identify that woman that makes the best pancake. And it doesn't matter whether it will be supplied in the 10th floor or whatever floor. Let us make use of the best policies and laws that are in place to enhance businesses where women take the lead. I thank
Honorable
you.
Lydia.
The biggest life equalizer for women is education. So with our universal primary education, the woman's life will take off like an electric lift. Because when you have able to read and write, you'll be able to access a lot of your rights, and you'll be able, even by the time the parish model comes to you, you are able to take informed decisions, but also you are able to balance your biology as you grow, but also your growth as a person. So UPE, UCE, alongside your maternal or reproductive rights, reproductive health, and choices. So once we promote the education of the girl child, that's already an opening for many opportunities to grow up the potential of every woman. Because even without an education, women are naturally medical workers, caregivers. Now, an education just takes them off. They're able to write and read. They're able to make choices. They're able to hustle around. So money will find them already built enough to do things and also to manage their reproductive rights, their reproductive health, because there is a way as you grow through your age, between the age of 18, 16, like the one I was said, when you begin your menstrual periods, you are now beginning to have your reproductive obligations, but also you need to grow and develop. So many of these, by the time you get money, and money will help you to be able to be confident to protect and secure your own choices, but also your own rights, so that you're not trampled over. You can negotiate. Even in the home, you can negotiate power relations. We've been able to measure the fact that actually there's a relationship between being empowered with resources and competence and an education. There's less likely to have domestic violence, because you're able to create a space and negotiate, and you're able to relate and also manage the relations. You can maneuver relations if you are empowered with money, but also have an education, and be able to know, to have what we call rational thinking, but also be a good negotiator within a relationship in the home. So domestic violence can disappear through the window once we take our girls to school, empower them economically, and reduce the poverty challenges that can come with conflict, with poverty, and lack of having capacity to make choices. And that's it.
Thank you. Lastly, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, thank you so much. One, I want first of all to thank UBC for the topic, because usually you have been bringing us to talk about politics. How many women? We have a speaker, we have a vice president, we have so that has been the topic. But I want to appreciate that we have started on business, and we need to take it to a bigger height. I want you to encourage, I've heard Dr. Sally saying that, please bring the men who are doing business here to tell us how many of us have they put into their businesses. But the other thing of capacity building is very critical to the women. The message, we have so many laws as we identified around this table, but how much do we translate down? Can we make sure that these women understand what is happening in the government? But there's a lot that government puts in, but sometimes the message doesn't reach to the end. I want to borrow, Lydia has already talked about education, but I'm borrowing the words of the president on Women's Day. He compared his mother, Esther, with his wife, Janet. And he said, you know, my mother, she labored through carrying water, carrying firewood, cooking on this, and that was her life. But Janet has not done that. So the lifestyle of Janet, because of education, because of money, because of everything, changed. She did not behave like her mother-in-law. So the president says now, let's talk about education, which she has already brought. A person who is educated gets knowledge, gets information. Because if I have a phone, I just go here and I get what? Information. I don't need anybody to tell me to go to a village and begin telling me the issues. He's talking of issues of skills and value addition. That is his project. And then we are talking about prosperity for all. And lastly, he brings the issue of ICT. Because these phones, in fact, when we are sensitizing people on grow, we are telling the women, if you don't have a phone, you can't get to grow. Because everything is done on business. Where? On the phone. The money, everything is here. Who is our partner? Who is dealing with us? It's all here. How do you get the money? Which banks are operating? So this is going to be a very useful tool. And I want to call upon the women out there. Let us compete. Technology is taking up the world. If we continue doing things rudimentarily, you will find that we shall remain in that kind of space. Okay. So I want to thank you, UBC, for the invite, not the invite of the project, for coming here to talk about business, but I want to encourage you. Take us to business, take us to technology, so that you know whether the women are coming there. You will be helping us to improve on our capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two recognitions. Godfrey Mugabi, who is watching from Mogadishu, Somalia, and also Esther Kello, who is watching from Saudi. Thank you very much for watching the show. Ladies, thank you very much for coming and staying here. I know for Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, the day has just begun. In about 6 hours, she's... We'll end with this quote that is not coming in by Lydia Wanyoto here. I cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water ripples that will make the change to the world. Mother Teresa there. Good morning.
Thank you.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Our program of poverty eradication is a must. We want everybody to be involved.
Through the parish development model, Ugandans are starting small but impactful projects to improve their livelihoods.
When we give 1 million, we know it's not enough to do many things, but it's a starting point.
I'm a PDM beneficiary, a farmer. Your Excellency, I was given 1 million Uganda shillings from Kobil Kawo PDM Sacco. Your Excellency, I got 20 bunches from my small piece of land, sold, got 400,000, put in the PDM farm, Your Excellency, in the PDM money, Your Excellency, I bought a cow of 1,400,000.
In 1 year, 100 families in the parish get. In 5 years, 500 families would have got.
We were the first people to receive money from Nakapiriprit. I received $1 million. I rented 4 acres of land and I was able to harvest 14 bags.
So really this 1 million is enabling somebody to start something. Yes, and we don't want to give too much money to one person because we have got very many people to cover.
The parish development model empowers the people, focusing on lifting up the masses and creating opportunities that ensure prosperity for all. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance.
In all these years, we emphasize 2 words, wealth and jobs. And we try to waken our people up to show them where wealth and jobs come from.
The Parish Development Model, PDM, is a bold initiative that is reshaping Uganda's rural economy. By allocating 100 million shillings to each parish annually, PDM empowers households by unlocking opportunities for wealth creation.
This program will be maintained. Each year we send 100 million for the parish. If you get the 1 million, you can buy some goats, you can buy some pigs, you can buy even young cows.
Farmers are transitioning from subsistence farming to commercial agriculture, laying the groundwork for wealth creation and improved livelihoods.
This project started 11 years ago after an inspiration from His Excellency. And that time I was working as a taxi driver. I was doing that Masao business in Soroti, and he was talking about how to improve household income.
With the PDM, you bring back the money after 24 months. But in the 3rd year, you would get another 100 million paid back by those who got first.
The President's message is a mindset changer. Becoming rich does not mean you should have a lot of land, you should have a lot of education, you just need a vision and implement and start from where you are.
So therefore, this PDM is to get all of you out of poverty. That's why we said 100 million per parish per year.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.